I'm up, so let's read this stupid motherfucker's EO. I have a repost with someone who actually is an expert in this who goes over it as well. But let's read it directly from the horse's ass. I mean, dickhead. By authority vested in me as president, by the Constitution and laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered. Section 1 purpose. Many wealthy Americans and government workers who participate in public pension plans. Wealthy Americans? That's wealthy Americans. Okay. Many wealthy Americans and government workers who participate in public pension plans can invest in or are the beneficiaries of investment in a number of alternative assets. Yet, while more than 90 million Americans participate in employer-sponsored defined contribution plans, the vast majority of these investors do not have the opportunity to participate either directly or through their retirement plans in the potential growth and diversification opportunities associated with alternative asset investments. Fiduciaries, they do so to protect the Americans whose retirement accounts they administer and for whom they have fiduciary duties to invest safely and prudently. Yeah, that's a good thing. During my first term, my administration issued a 2020 information letter recognizing that prudent federal action could encourage the proliferation of investment strategies under which a portion of retirement plan participants' interests are allocated to alternative assets, as is the case for institutional investors. Burdensome lawsuits that seek to challenge reasonable decisions by loyal, regulated fiduciaries. But would they still be loyal and regulated fiduciaries if you allow them to do some high-risk ass shit? Anyway. And stifling Department of Labor guidance issued since my first term, however, have denied millions of Americans opportunities to benefit from investment and alternative assets. Yes, because it's too risky. You're talking about my 401k, bitch. That's my retirement. Y'all don't like pensions because you hate you. So yes, they should challenge these. Such assets are an increasingly large portion of the portfolios of public pension and defined benefit retirement plans. They offer competitive returns along with diversification opportunities. They're just trying to make sure that people don't lose their shirts, bro. That's all that this is about. Because we've seen before with Enron, because the lady that I repost talks about Enron and Sarbanes-Oxley and why we have rules. We've seen with Enron, we've seen with mortgage-backed securities. We've seen what happens when you allow these motherfuckers to just run rampant. They started getting real creative and creating a bunch of high-risk assets because they want to gamble with other people's money. Because that's all Wall Street is, gambling with other people's money. A combination of regulatory overreach and encouragement of lawsuits filed by opportunistic trial lawyers has stifled investment innovation and largely regulated 401k and other defined contribution retirement plan participants to asset classes whose returns lack the very same long-term net benefits allowed for and achieved by public pension plans and other institutional investors. Broski. It's already bad enough you're telling me that public pension plans are being managed by a bunch of high-risk cowboys who are always on cocaine. Because they're still on cocaine. You want my 401k to be managed by these weirdos as well? Look how they frame people who just want to make sure that you don't get ripped off. My administration will relieve the regulatory burdens. Oh no, because regulations are bad. Didn't we just have multiple listeria outbreaks because you guys hate regulations? Regulatory burdens and litigation risks that impede American workers' retirement accounts from achieving the competitive returns and asset diversification necessary to secure a dignified, comfortable retirement. Leave my shit alone. We don't know what's going to happen, but based on how the Republicans have been moving, I would not be surprised if this is the move. If they're going to do that at a bare fucking minimum, they need to make sure that we can fucking opt out of this shit. I do not want my 401k managed by these fucking weirdos. Section 2, policy. It is the policy of the United States that every American preparing for retirement should have access to funds that include investments in alternative assets when relevant plan fiduciary determines that such access provides an appropriate opportunity for plan participants and beneficiaries to enhance the net risk adjusted returns on their retirement assets. And notice I gotta go back. He says they want to relieve regulatory burdens, but he also talks about how the fiduciaries are these, carefully vet and, they look at people's capabilities and experiences and this, that, and the third. You think if they get rid of regulations that all of a sudden that those terms are still going to apply? That they're still going to carefully vet and that they're going to look at people's capabilities and experiences and all this other stuff? Anyway, Section 3, democratizing access to alternative assets. For purposes of this order, the term alternative assets means, here we go, private market investments, including direct and indirect interest in equity, debt, or other financial instruments that are not traded on public exchanges. Now, if they're not traded on public exchanges, do we see their books? Are they being properly monitored? Who's monitoring them so that people can make sure that they're not cooking their books? Because public exchanges have to file paperwork, and that paperwork we can go see. You want us to invest in private market investments that include direct and indirect interest in equity, like private equity? Private equity that's famous for bankrupting businesses? Successful businesses like Joanne's. Debt? Is it because we're accumulating massive amounts of debt because you can't run an economy? Or other financial instruments that are not traded on public exchanges, including those where the manager of such investments, if applicable, seek to take an active role in the management of such companies. Wait a minute. The managers of the investments are also managers of the companies? That seems like a bad idea. That seems like the foxes are guarding the henhouse type thing. And they're not necessarily on public exchanges. So you want the managers of the investments who can also be managers of the company who aren't on public exchanges, and we may not have access to their books. Because that's what this sounds like to me. Another alternative asset. 2, direct and indirect interest in real estate, including debt instruments secured by direct or indirect interest in real estate. Somebody says mortgage-backed securities? That sounds like mortgage-backed securities, or you're going to come up with another name for it. The same motherfucking thing. Anywho, holdings in actively managed investment vehicles that are investing in digital assets. Hold on. I gotta see what they potentially could mean. Digital assets, because that sounds like fucking crypto. Yep. Any files stored in a digital format that hold value for a brand or business. They are intangible assets representing ownership, value, or rights stored and transferred using, drumroll bitches, blockchain technology. He wants to invest in fucking crypto, bro. He wants to take your 401ks and invest them in fucking crypto. You mean pump and dump schemes? Meme coins, nigga? That's what we... Direct and indirect investments in commodities. Direct and indirect investments in projects financing infrastructure development. Now, that lady on TikTok got a whole series about Kristi Noem and the weird ways in which she kept funneling money through infrastructure projects. So, I wonder. Lifetime income investment strategies, including longevity risk-sharing pools. Longevity risk-sharing pools are arrangements often found in defined benefit pension plans or group annuities where the risk of individuals living longer than expected is spread across a group. This pooling mechanism allows for greater income security in retirement, potentially offering higher payout rates than individual annuities. Longevity risk refers to the possibility that an individual might live longer than anticipated, potentially outliving their savings and retirement income. Instead of each individual managing their own longevity risk, these pools combine the longevity risk of many people. Those who die earlier than expected essentially subsidize those who live longer through what is known as mortality credits. Didn't know that. Learning new things. I like the fact that they're taking bets on when you die, because that's kind of what it sounds like. B, within 180 days of this order, the Secretary of Labor, shall re-examine the Department of Labor's past and present guidance regarding fiduciary duties under the Employee Retirement Income Security Act of 1974, as amended in connection with making available to participants an asset allocation fund that includes investments in alternative assets. When conducting this re-examination, the Secretary shall consider whether to rescind the Department of Labor's December 21, 2021 supplemental private equity statement. Hold on, I gotta look some things up. Let's look this one up first. Okay, so let's look at why the Employee Retirement Income Security Act exists. Why was it created? Enacted in response to concerns about the mismanagement and potential fraud within private sector employee benefit plans, particularly pensions. The Studebaker plant shut down in 1963, where employees lost their promised pensions due to inadequate funding, highlighted the need for stronger regulations. So, as with most laws in the United States, they only ever get passed because they're responding to some fuck shit that screwed people over. Let's look up the Department of Labor's private equity statement, because we know private equity is the paragons of moral virtue and all that other shit. This is literally saving us from getting fucked over. Okay, so it's not that you can't invest in private equity. It's just that, what are they saying? Rather, the information letter confirmed that, as with any investment, plan fiduciaries must determine that an investment that includes private equity is, among other things, prudent and made solely in the interest of the plan's participants and beneficiaries. Importantly, the information letter did not endorse or recommend such investments. Rather, the information letter noted that PE investments tend to be more complicated, with longer time horizons, and are typically less liquid, and are subject to different regulatory standards and disclosure rates than other traditional individual account plan investment options. In addition, the information letter noted that the valuation of PE investments is more complex and their fees are typically higher. You're paying more to get fucked over. So some history on it. The Department of Labor got a risk alert, and then that's why they issued the letter. The risk alert addressed 3 areas: conflicts of interest, fees and expenses, and policies and procedures relating to material non-public information. Again, non-public information, shit that we cannot see. After carefully considering stakeholder input and implications of the SEC risk alert, the department concluded that it should supplement the information letter to ensure that plan fiduciaries do not expose plan participants and beneficiaries to unwarranted risks by misreading the letter as saying PE as a component of a designated investment alternative is generally appropriate for a typical 401k plan. If I don't want my shit to be super fucking high risk, do not invest me in high risk instruments. Like, that seems reasonable. First, the department agrees with some stakeholders that the recitation in the information letter of representations by the requester regarding the claimed benefits of private equity investments reflected the perspective of the private equity industry. The representations were not balanced with counter-arguments and research data from independent sources. For example, some stakeholders expressed concern about the representations that designated investment alternatives with a PE component offer plan participants who have longer investment horizons an equity-based investment choice that may enhance in retirement outcomes when compared to investment choices containing only publicly traded securities, just like they talked about in that EO. The stakeholders challenged this assertion and warned that performance calculations must be carefully analyzed because they are not standardized or regulated like disclosures from registered investment companies. There you go. Performance calculations. So they were basically trying to say that, according to their calculations, that, certain PE investments will give you a better return on your whatever money you invest long term. But they're saying that performance calculations must be carefully analyzed because they are not standardized or regulated like disclosures from registered investment companies, such as mutual funds. So the same performance calculations that they're going to use to tell you how great this plan is are not standardized and regulated. That's what I'm reading this. The stakeholders expressed concerns about the adequacy of investment disclosures that would be provided to participants and beneficiaries who may not have specialized investment education and experience. So even though they may give them disclosures, it doesn't mean that they can necessarily understand them or make sense of them to figure out probably if they're bullshitting. The stakeholders also observed that retirement savers may often need to liquidate or transfer these assets at an earlier stage than many long-term investors, especially workers that frequently change jobs. Long story short, he wants to re-examine all of the things that are designed to keep us, and by us, I mean the motherfuckers who are managing our 401ks, from investing in high-risk options that can literally wipe us the fuck out. C. Within 180 days of this order, the Secretary shall further, as the Secretary deems appropriate and consistent with applicable law, seek to clarify the Department of Labor's position on alternative assets and the appropriate fiduciary process associated with offering asset allocation funds containing investment and alternative This reads like a threat to me, kind of. I ain't even gonna hold you. Because he's saying, seek to clarify the Department of Labor's position. What if their position doesn't change, or, I don't know. It just reads kind of funny. Such clarification must aim to identify the criteria that fiduciaries should use to prudently balance potentially higher expenses against objectives of seeking greater long-term net returns and broader diversification of investments. He's doing this to appease private equity and the people who fund him. He's doing this to appease these weirdos. Like, this is all about destroying us. I have such intense feelings when it comes to this thing. That's all I can say. I have very intense feelings. The Secretary shall also propose rules, regulations, or guidance as the Secretary deems appropriate that clarify the duties that a fiduciary owes. That'll be interesting. To plan participants under ERISA when deciding whether to make available to plan participants an asset allocation fund that includes investments in alternative assets, which rules, regulations, and guidance may include appropriately calibrated safe harbors. In carrying out the directives in this section to further the policy set forth in this order, the Secretary shall prioritize actions that may curb ERISA litigation that constrains fiduciaries' ability to apply their best judgment in offering investment opportunities to relevant plan participants. So all of the laws that he's complaining about, he wants to curb those lawsuits that are literally designed to stop them from doing something fucking reckless. In carrying out the directives in this section, the Secretary shall, as appropriate, consult with the Secretary of Treasury, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and other federal regulators as necessary to carry out the policy objectives of this order, including as to parallel regulatory changes that may be incorporated by such other federal regulators. The SEC shall, in consultation with the Secretary, consider ways to facilitate access to investments and alternative assets by participants and participant direct defined contribution retirement savings plans. It seems like that may give me a carve out, or give us a carve out, to opt out of this. That's what it reads like. Such facilitation may include, but not be limited to, consideration of revisions to existing SEC, and they want to revise regulations again, revisions to existing SEC regulations and guidance relating to accredited investor and qualified purchaser status to accomplish the policy objectives of this order. What is the point? I'm not going to the SEC site, but I wonder what the point of this is. Edit, because I love edits. I read it again. Such facilitation may include, but not be limited to, consideration of revisions to existing SEC regulation and guidance relating to accredited investor and qualified purchaser status. That sounds like they're going to loosen regulations on who can be an investor, an accredited investor, which means we're likely going to see, if this gets passed and gets implemented in any way, shape, and form, you're going to likely see a bunch of people, fly-by-night operations, that are going to sit there and promise you crazy returns. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to take your money and do a pump and dump pyramid scheme, crypto investment, and a bunch of people are going to lose their shirts. Because that's exactly what this sounds like. That's interesting. Section 4, general provisions. Nothing in this order shall be construed to impair or otherwise affect 1. The authority granted by law to an executive department or agency or head thereof. 2. The functions of the director of the Office of Management and Budget relating to budgetary, administrative, or legal proposals. This order shall be implemented consistent with applicable law and subject to availability of appropriations. This order is not intended to and does not create any right or benefit, substantive or procedural, enforceable at law or in equity by any party against the United States department. The cost of publications of this order shall be borne by the Department of Labor.